My name is Ted Burns, and I'm Senior Director of Political Affairs and RADPAC for the American College of Radiology Association, and I want to welcome you to our RADVOCACY podcast hosted by RADPAC. Our goal with the podcast is to give you a behind-the-scenes look into the various advocacy efforts of the college, our members, and insights from political influencers here in Washington, D.C. Today, I'm honored to have for our podcast my colleagues in our Government Relations Department, Josh Cooper, Rebecca Spangler, and Ashley Walton. Many of our folks who are going to be listening to this podcast, I'm sure, are very familiar with Josh and Rebecca, household names. They've been with the college for a very long time and have done great work in our legislative part of our GR department. Ashley is relatively new to the college. And Ashley, if you want to jump in and give a quick description of your background prior to joining us here at the ACR.
Hi there. Thanks, Ted. I'm Ashley, and I most recently came from the American Society of Anesthesiologists. I studied history and political science in school and then ultimately ended up in law school. I've lived in Washington, D.C. for the past 12 years, and I'm happy to join the college.
Well, we're happy to have you, and it's interesting. Not a lot of our guests probably understand the nuance of how close everyone in D.C. is. It's like the smallest big city in America. And so even though Ashley's new to us, she's not new to us because we would see her pretty much every week on the fundraising circuit, at meetings on the Hill in her capacity with the anesthesiologist. So we were super excited to have her join us. We've seen her in action, and she's very good, and she's going to do a great job complementing the efforts of Josh and Rebecca on our team. So before we get into talking about our issues and what happened at the end of last year legislatively and what's likely to happen, or who knows now, what could happen in this year, I'm curious if you guys could walk us through kind of a normal day for you all. Now, obviously, things are kind of slowly getting back to the pre-COVID days, if you will, but kind of maybe a taste of a pre-COVID day, and then during COVID, and then now kind of how things are, if it's kind of a combination of the two or somewhere in the middle. Josh, I don't know if you want to start since you have the seniority here on our call.
Yeah, it's about the only thing it's good for. Thanks, Ted, for doing this. And I'd like to thank Rebecca and Ashley for their help and all of our efforts for our members. A typical day pre-pandemic, I think would start off with kind of going through emails, reviewing the news, any updates on any general goings on Capitol Hill, whether it had to do with the introduction of new legislation, monitoring whatever other legislation we were looking into. The rest of the day would be filled with meetings in-house or traveling to other organizations or offices for meetings. Those meetings obviously included meetings with staff and or members on Capitol Hill, and then sprinkled in throughout the day, whether it's a breakfast, a lunch, or a dinner, would be attending fundraising events with congressional members, senators, and staff. That would probably be a typical day. Obviously, some days would be weighted more with one or the other meetings and or fundraisers, but that's probably a typical day. During the pandemic, for the last couple of years, we have been working from home, taking advantage of technology through Zoom or Teams software. Thankfully, Capitol Hill was wired up as well because we had to take advantage of that as rules first for the pandemic, not allowing others than those who worked on Capitol Hill in the buildings. So face-to-face meetings were off. And then certainly after the January 6th insurrection, the security was even greater. So that made it even more restrictive to actually go and have face-to-face meetings. But again, thankfully, technology helped us out. We were certainly able to communicate relatively easily with our friends on Capitol Hill and amongst each other. And I would add, and I'll let my colleagues weigh in on this, I would say that because you reduce the travel time, reduced assembly time, we probably work even longer and harder during the pandemic. And as we continue to emerge from the pandemic, right now it just seems that the meetings and the calls just are back to back throughout the day and quite often. So it's a double-edged sword, as most things related to technology are. But we certainly, I don't think we lost a step. Maybe we were even a little more efficient as we got used to this type of communication. So Rebecca and then Ashley, I'll see if you all have anything to add to our pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic typical days.
Thanks, Josh. This is Rebecca. I'll just add that one of the things I was pleasantly surprised by as we all transitioned to kind of this new world order in, post-COVID times was that I think, we thought we all communicated fairly often before, but I think now with everybody being in more of a variety of locations, let's just say, we've almost started to hyper communicate, right? Like I am in more regular conversation with both my ACR colleagues, my other counterparts at the other physician organizations, and staff, honestly, and congressional staff than I was previous to. So I think that's kind of one of those things that's turned into a bright side that has resulted from this whole experience.
I would just add that I agree with what Rebecca and Josh have said, but maybe another way to look at it is we've all become so efficient as well. Hill staffers really do take advantage of the ability to jump on the phone, and I think they can get more meetings done that way as well. And so I feel like me and my colleagues have had the ability to have more meetings because there are more conference calls rather than, having that time to commute up to the Hill and stay at the Hill and, wait for the next meeting, etc. So I think it's made us all very efficient.
Just jumping in, one thing that I've noticed as well is, and this is probably more specific to me and kind of how my day would go versus you all, but I was a really big kind of loiterer, and so I would go to the Capitol Hill Club and legitimately just park it there for 2-3 hours, and you're kind of having two or three different meetings and you have maybe a half hour, 40-minute break. But, during those breaks, you pop into, the NRCC or the DCCC, or you pop in and meet with a fundraiser at their office right up there on the Hill. And you kind of always felt a little bit connected and kind of felt like you heard on the street, different rumors and different things that were kind of happening. And the absence of that, I thought, would really, really be difficult and almost impossible to overcome. But I think to the hyper communication part, and that's where it's like, you're constantly texting and checking in with people that you probably otherwise wouldn't be doing as much. And that's just not with congressional staff and fundraisers and people to know. But also, I think a lot how much, especially Rebecca, with you with the coalition, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but talking to our counterparts at other physician organizations, talking to our counterparts in the healthcare space in general at large, kind of, hey, what are you hearing? Have you met with this office? I haven't had a chance to do. I think there's a lot more of that going on than maybe ever before. I don't know if you all agree with that or not, but I think that the amount of communication certainly seems like it's increased tremendously in that way.
Ted, I agree with that. I think you're absolutely right. I think we're fortunate that our counterparts, obviously at the other physician specialty organizations, we are a very familiar group. We all know each other. We've known each other for a long time. We all get along. And I think,
Mostly.
there are several of my colleagues who I'm sure probably regret giving me their cell phone numbers because I have zero shame and will text when I have a question. And thankfully they text, which is great.
Yeah. So, as the legislative team, you guys have been working tirelessly to stop these cuts, not just last year, but over the last several years. It's kind of like those who remember the days of the SGR sustainable growth rate. It's like that 2.0. So, I think the one thing that we've really tried hard at the college and specifically within our government relations department, we've really tried to, again, to your point, Rebecca, about hyper communicating with our membership about the coalition that we are involved in, really that you guys run, and how that has been used and how that has been so effective and influential in our efforts. And I kind of want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that, because I feel like as much as we reference it and talk about it, we can't do that enough. I don't think people fully understand just how much of a time commitment that is and amount of work and negotiations that's involved in that process. So if you want to talk a little bit about that specifically, Rebecca, because I know that that's something that you've been really entrenched in the last year.
Sure. Thanks, Ted. The genesis of this coalition was that in 2020, CMS was pushing through or finalizing a revaluation of outpatient E&M codes, which make up a huge volume of the fee schedule. As a result of this revaluation, the conversion factor adjustment was right around, or scheduled to be right around 10%, and which would have had a huge negative impact on those who bill a very low volume of E&M codes, or those like radiologists who don't bill any E&M codes. So that was kind of the big genesis of forming the coalition. So we started looking at the impact table, and we looked at the others on the impact table who were set for a significant reduction, and really just started talking to people and started calling people and say, hey, do you guys see this? Can we get together on this? Can we discuss something? Figure out a way to move forward, because there's never really a good time for that significant of a reduction, but 2020 was a particularly bad time for that significant of a reduction. So we were able to reach out to some of our obviously physician and non-physician provider friends and kind of get everybody together and get on the same page and kind of talk through solutions, and have continued to advocate together for relief to these, what has now unfortunately become a year-over-year cut for the last 3 years.
Ted, I would add, Rebecca's extremely modest. She has done a fantastic job in the last couple of years in leading this coalition, herding the cats, if you will. A coalition that when we send out letters, the amount of organizations is over 100, and it's no small task, as you referenced earlier, in gathering all those people, making sure that they're on board, editing, again, herding the cats. And actually, the biggest part of it is getting results. And I think that is probably what stands out most with regard to this coalition that ACR started and has nurtured, and again, has gotten results. Specifically for radiology, over the last 3 years, our efforts have resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars being saved for the specialty and our membership. And I think that is something that members of ACR can be proud of in its role as a leader in the healthcare and medical specialty field in moving this type of legislation, which is no small feat. Not only were we in the middle of a pandemic, but we're also in the middle of probably the most contentious time in congressional history. So to manage to not only get something done, but something as significant as what we were able to push through, certainly should be highlighted, not only amongst our membership, but the rest of medicine.
Yeah, and the two things that I talk about a decent amount when I'm interacting with our members, or if I'm giving a talk at a chapter or anything like that, is one, especially with DC, like really strange bedfellows. I think Rebecca had referenced the fact that you have MD and non-MD providers. So, we're beating the what out of each other with a particular organization on scope, but then we turn right around and we're like holding hands on this issue. And that's kind of like how DC works a little bit, right? Like you can just never burn bridges. And then the other thing is, these issues, in particular, they apply to so many groups, obviously, in the healthcare space and in the provider space. But one group can't just do it alone. I mean, it's really strength in numbers type mentality. And I think the number is over 1 million providers or whatever it is that it is equated to the different organizations represented in the coalition. But that's significant. That's real broad support. It's not just, okay, well, here comes the radiologists and only the radiologists again pushing the same old issue. It's all of us. And I just think that carries so much more leverage. It makes it so much more difficult for us to be ignored or pushed aside. We still get a little bit ignored and we still get pushed aside, but maybe not as much as we otherwise would. So I that's the other two things that really stand out about the coalition. And I think, again, a tribute to Rebecca, because it's hard to keep adding members to the coalition. It's hard to sometimes maintain members of the coalition, and also making sure that they know that, like, hey, if we have kind of disagreements and other issues, that doesn't preclude us from working together on this. So I big props to you guys, because this is a really big deal. And I wanted to highlight it because I feel like it's something that gets a little bit under the radar attention, and it's a pretty big effort. So let's talk about how things went down at the end of the year last year regarding all the different cuts, in particular the ones that we're really laser focused on with the Medicare ones, and just kind of your thoughts. If you want to get in some detail, obviously we've put out some statements on our website and things of that nature. But if you guys want to talk about kind of the process and then just the end result.
I'll take a stab at it first and have Ashley and Rebecca jump in with inevitably what the details I forget. I think, as everybody knows, we were shooting for getting rid of the full cuts, which amounted to roughly 4.5% against the conversion factor for 2023. There was also a mandatory congressional budgetary 4% reduction known as PAYGO that we also needed to try and nullify, basically adding up to 8.5% in Medicare reductions for 2023. We stayed together. The coalition and its members stayed together. We were very forceful and direct on the fact that we wanted to get rid of the 4.5%. We had numerous meetings. We activated all of our grassroots. And as an aside, thank you to all the ACR members who participated in those grassroots, reaching out to your members of Congress and their staff. It was certainly beneficial. But Congress had a number of priorities at the end of the year, and we were able to claw back 2.5% on the conversion factor cut. We were able to get rid of the 4% PAYGO cut. So we clawed back 70, in essence, 76%, 75% of the impending cuts. We are still extremely disappointed. We think we made an extremely valid case for not maintaining the full 4.5%. I think we pulled out all the stops, but Congress unfortunately had other things in mind. I think moving forward, it's certainly this, I should say, not only this year, but the last 3 years certainly indicates, not only for ACR, but for other members of the provider community, that serious Medicare payment reform needs to be considered and moved forward in Congress. And we're going to continue working hard to move that forward in 2023. Although, Ted, as you referenced, and we'll talk about later, we're off to a bit of a little stumble, at least on the House side, in moving anything forward, let alone Medicare payment reform.
Yeah, it's already hard enough as it is, right?
Yeah, no.
Rebecca and Ashley, I don't know if you guys want to put any additional flavor on that, or if you feel like that was pretty well covered. But there's just so many different dynamics to everything that was happening towards the end of the year this past year.
I think the only thing that I'll add, and Ted, this kind of goes back to a comment that you made where this feels very SGR-like again. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that the Hill likes. That's not something that we like. We are very clear about the fact that when we're talking to members of Congress, we don't want to be up here with our hands out asking for money at the end of the year every single year either. That's why we really need them to focus on some kind of substantive payment reform so that we're not always in this position. And that's kind of to Josh's point. That's something that we'll be trying to hone in on next year, and something that we will definitely be looking for assistance from our advocates in kind of pushing that message forward.
And Ted, I'd actually, I'm going to put Ashley on the spot. Ashley is the kind of the newest member. I didn't know if you had any insights into kind of coming into this war room, if you will, with the coalition moving forward on this particular issue.
Well, admittedly, I'm familiar with the coalition since I did come from another medical society, but I was not as deeply involved as I currently am. So it really is pretty rewarding to see the medical community collaborate like it does on this issue. All the providers are facing these cuts, like my colleagues just alluded to, every single year. But it's very rewarding to see that we all care about the same things and we have a cohesive message. And although it didn't go down exactly how we wanted it to this year, it really is one of those things we can all unite on.
And I think it's, Rebecca, you made a good point as far as us having to, we're going to segue into this about, well, let's just talk about, you guys summed up what happened last year. Now we got to figure out what to do this year, right? And it's not going away, at least in the immediate future. I'm here. We're all home in our offices, and I'm here in my house watching the 12th, 13th vote for speaker. And it's such a mess. It's so contentious. And I think what we need to figure out, and this is something we need to figure out among us on the call. We're actually going to be meeting in the office next week, which will be great, to talk about some of this stuff, as well as just the provider community at large, is how do we get the attention of members of Congress and staff and committee staff, especially. I shouldn't say get their attention, but really have them see this as the priority that we believe it should be, right? I mean, there's just so many things that occupy their bandwidth. And there's a very real level of fatigue. I think, Rebecca, you kind of alluded to that a little bit as well. Fatigue on our end, fatigue on their end. But if we kind of want to end this fatigue, we kind of have to all be committed to it. And I feel like it's really hard trying to figure out how to use a coalition to our advantage on this issue for a short term, but then looking at a long term, even bigger reform effort, that's going to be challenging in a lot of ways. And so how do we kind of do this dance skillfully with keeping as many people as we can on the same page, and also making sure that people on the Hill feel like we're on the same page and we can kind of come together to really have a policy that's going to be sustainable and agreeable to as many people as possible. So with that long-winded segue, what do you guys expect or think is possible this year, next year? How, what's the window of time we're looking at, and what are some of the potential outcomes?
Ted, I think we were talking earlier today. We talked multiple times a day, and I think Ashley had a very good insight just before we kind of get into the radiology specific goals and what we think we might be able to accomplish. Just kind of the atmosphere of Congress. And Ashley, I'd love for you to share what you discussed with regard to how things are just divided from the get-go, and how that's already kind of a major hurdle in front of us.
Yeah, we certainly aren't starting off on a good foot since we do not have a Speaker of the House yet. So I think that's kind of forecasting where things are going as well. But if you think about, the makeup of Congress right now, we have the Democrats controlling in the Senate and then the Republicans on the House side. So it really does make for a divided government. And anytime you have that sort of system in place, it makes it harder to get legislation passed, harder to find agreement among members of Congress. And of course, it makes our jobs more difficult trying to get members of Congress on the same page on our issues.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say in addition to, it's just an overall backdrop of kind of what we're walking into this year. I mean, we've already seen it. We're watching these quote unquote negotiations by McCarthy to become speaker in the concessions, and you start really reading through that, and it's not going to be overly favorable for a lot of folks, most folks, to get anything done legislatively. The way that they're really taking away whoever the speaker is going to be, assuming let's say it's McCarthy, they're really taking away his leverage, his power, his ability to drive agenda. Some may say that's good, some may argue it's not. But then the cost component, right? I mean, they're on the Republican side, they have a very slim majority, but they are very, very, very focused on cost. Anything that has a cost, and of course, if we're going to do anything with a big reform type initiative, that's not going to be cheap. So, how do we figure that out?
It is going to be quite difficult, and I think mostly because the priorities will change with a Republican House, and they certainly will be different than a Democratic Senate. And how we're able to try and kind of climb the ladder of priorities, if you will, within both houses is going to be a challenge. Certainly not insurmountable, but it will be a challenge when, and Rebecca, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, especially when what we would consider very basic legislative agenda items appear that they're going to be difficult to achieve. So more nuanced issues like the ones we're going to face may be a little harder to get attention for. But Rebecca, I'd love your insight on that dynamic as well.
I think one of the things that has been made crystal clear to me kind of over the course of my career, that as much as Congress says they don't like to patch things and they don't like short-term solutions, they also don't like to spend money. And do you know what costs money? Long-term solutions, right?
Right.
So I think we just have to kind of stay as united as possible and keep saying, look, we're ready. We want to talk about this. We want to at least start having these conversations because we know this year over year thing is not sustainable, and kind of make sure that Congress knows we're here to be kind of partners as we look towards some kind of substantive Medicare payment reform. Until then, if we have to keep doing short-term patches so to get us, like as a bridge to get us to whatever that long-term solution may be, then that's unfortunately where we are. It's not anyone's favorite place to be, but that's where we wind up. And I think another kind of political wrinkle in all of this that will just become increasingly more evident in the next year and a half or so is that we are on our way towards a presidential election. And that's going to also, and Ted, this is your ballpark, right?
Yeah.
Going to complicate, that's going to further complicate an already complicated dynamic.
It's going to be really, really tough. I will say if there's like a silver lining potentially from my perspective, is in the House, there's a thing called the Doc Caucus, which is members of Congress who previously becoming a member of Congress practiced medicine, MDs, not all MDs, but mostly MDs. And that Doc Caucus is Republican. There are a small handful of providers on the Democrat side in the House, but the good majority of them are Republican. And in the past few years, those Doc Caucus members have tried really, really hard on our behalf to help us, but they were in the minority in the House, and so they didn't have the same kind of potential oomph. And I'm hopeful that now with Republicans in the majority, the Doc Caucus can maybe be a little bit more influential, a little bit more aggressive, and even more impactful than they already have been, hopefully. But we'll see if that really moves the needle. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, everything is, again, it just requires so many different things to go right for us to have any kind of success, and hopefully that's at least one thing that we can count on as we look to this year and next year in this Congress. Is there anything else we missed as far as what we're facing and what we think could potentially happen for this Congress?
Well, again, I'll finish off with just one other issue that I know our members care about, and that is the ongoing implementation of the No Surprises Act,
Mm-hmm.
or surprise billing. I think the dynamics that we mentioned with regard to the makeup of Congress, we know that there are members who agree that the implementation is not going as well as they would like. I'll put it gently. And I know that there is interest in tweaking the law through legislation, most likely. And it will be interesting to see if our previous champions who have sided with physicians will be able to move anything forward again with all of these competing priorities, and just again with elections coming up. But just so our members know, we will be working with our colleagues in medicine to explore ways that we can improve the implementation. Just kind of again as an aside, I think that has been another benefit of our organizing and leading our coalition on Medicare cuts, is that we've really developed some strong relationships with our colleagues in other organizations to try and tackle issues like this. But that's one issue that I think we will be exploring and certainly monitoring and looking for opportunities.
No, it's great. No, it's a big issue. Obviously, it's not going anywhere anytime soon either. Well, I feel like we could make this like a 3-hour podcast, and we may have to do a second one as we get closer to the Hill Day this May, which I'm excited about. Us returning to in-person Hill Day. I know our members were asking a lot this past year at the annual meeting, like, hey, are we going to do it? Are we going to do it? I'm getting texts all the time from our members. Hey, what's going to happen in 23? And we are going to have it, and we're excited about that. Kind of going back to what we were saying earlier in the podcast about, the pre-COVID and, then the pandemic and now, the Capitol and the congressional office buildings are all open now. I mean, it's a lot easier to get in there and not have to rely as much as we have over the past couple of years on texting and phone calls. And so I think it'll be helpful for us, but I think it'll also be great to have our members in mass go up this spring and remind a lot of the members of Congress about our issues and their value in delivering healthcare, and also educating a lot of freshman members of Congress. I think there's over 70 new members of Congress in the House. And so, a lot of them have no clue what it is we do. We're kind of back to square one with a lot of those congressional offices, right? So it's going to be an exciting year, a busy year. I do want to, be respectful of all of your guys' time, because I know that even though it's a Friday afternoon when we're recording, we're still always, got stuff going on with things on the Hill. So we're going to do a lightning round, which is how we typically end every episode. And there is obviously no right answer or wrong answer. It's just your answer as to some of your favorite things. And we'll go through each one of you. And I think this is kind of a fun way for people to get to know you as individuals, not just like, hey, that's ACR employee number 3, and they go to the Hill for us. And so
They were all number 1, Ted.
That's right. But so be honest with your answer. We'll go quick, but also do know that between now and the annual meeting, if this podcast is heard by some of our folks, someone may come up and give you a hard time about one of your answers too. So just be prepared. All right, for everyone, favorite food. So we'll go Ashley, favorite food.
Seafood.
Seafood. Josh?
Pizza.
Pizza. Rebecca?
Also pizza.
Oh, I was going to say pierogies.
Curveball.
Favorite place to travel, Ashley?
Anywhere with a beach.
Okay. Josh?
Ditto.
Okay. Rebecca?
Almost 3 for 3. Anywhere with a warm weather beach.
Okay. Fair enough. Favorite hobby activity, Ashley?
Running/eating. So I work out so I can eat whatever I want.
It's a combined thing. Got it. Josh.
Golfing.
Okay. Rebecca.
Shopping.
Okay.
I'm a good shopper, Ted.
Hey, we haven't seen each other in the office for a long time, but I have not lost memory of all the shoes you used to have.
And I drive a hard bargain.
Accumulating in your office. Okay, we're going to end on this one. Favorite saying, favorite quote. This can be a well-known saying or quote. This can be like your own little thing. Ashley.
Okay, I'm not sure who said it, but nobody accomplishes anything significant alone.
Okay, Josh.
Paraphrasing a Mae West quote, when picking between two evils, choose the one you haven't tried.
All right, and then Rebecca.
Also paraphrasing, she knew she could, so she did.
Love it. The good thing about this is I don't have to answer any lightning round questions because I'm the host, so I just have to have you guys answer. So
we can answer for you, Ted.
You guys could probably answer all those. So I can't thank you guys enough for joining me on this podcast. I know that our members are always interested in what's happening. I think you guys, by way of this podcast, are giving them a really good kind of look behind the scenes and also a feel for what it's like on the Hill and kind of operationalize everything that you all do on their behalf. And looking forward to getting back in the office and seeing you guys and working with you guys, face to face more often this year. And, as someone who has been doing this for a very long time and has interacted with all the different physician specialty organizations and people outside the specialty physician community, like you guys truly are, the best of the best. The college is very lucky to have you guys. I hope our members feel that way. I think they probably do about you guys, but I know I certainly do. So thanks for all you guys do for us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ted. We miss you too.
All right, guys. Have a good one. I appreciate it.